And at Sophie Cunningham early, and considering this is Bria Hartley, I'm not ruling out she jumped through any. Considering who it is, I'm not. Like, Bria Hartley has been ejected multiple times. She's yanked Angel by the hair. This is the Connecticut Sun. This is a team that have jumped through players' knees before.
Bria Hartley has had dirty plays all season. But you got to know who we're talking about. Bria Hartley is the same girl that pulled Angel Reese out of there by her ponytail just last game, I think 2 days ago. She pulls Becca Allen by her head to the floor, and Ariel Atkins goes over there to protect her teammate. Bria Hartley has been doing dirty things for all season.
What if the thing everyone thought would finally break a team turned out to be the very thing that made them stronger? That's the question hanging over the Indiana Fever after one of the most chaotic, emotional, and downright shocking games of their season. Fans came in expecting disaster, missing all 3 true point guards, already battered by injuries, facing a Connecticut Sun team that has a reputation.
Been out.
Sophie Cunningham was flat out targeted by a dirty player.
I'd say there's a near 0% chance that Sophie Cunningham plays again this year.
For grinding opponents into the floor. Then came the collision that silenced the arena. Sophie Cunningham collapsing, screaming in pain, clutching her knee as her family and teammates looked on helplessly. The common belief? That was it. That was the night the Fever's season would spiral into irrelevance. But reality had something else in store, and it played out like a script nobody could have written. Because instead of folding, instead of limping to another painful loss, Indiana found a way to fight back. And they didn't just scrape by. They authored the biggest comeback in franchise history, fueled by a career-defining performance from Kelsey Mitchell, unlikely heroics from players most fans didn't even know would be on the floor, and a kind of grit that transformed outrage into energy. This wasn't just a win. It was a rebuke to the expectation that Indiana was a team defined by its wounds. And if you think you know what happens when a short-handed team loses its toughness, mid-game, buckle up. Because the reality is nothing like the expectation. Let's start with the setup, because context matters. Before the opening tip, the Fever were already playing uphill. Caitlin Clark, still sidelined after that brutal groin shot in mid-July. Sydney Colson, torn ACL. Ari McDonald, broken foot. That meant 0 true point guards. Imagine showing up to a chess match without your queen.
Sophie Cunningham. Oh, man. I got to tell you, this victory, it came with a big price.
Look at today's game where Sophie Cunningham went out in the first half. And that was such a huge blow for the Indiana Fever because Sophie Cunningham has been somebody, she has been the glue of this team since Caitlin has.
Brooke or Bishop and being told to go win anyway. Head coach Stephanie White had to tear up her playbook, shrink it down to simple sets, and tell her players, okay, you're going to run roles you've never run before. Expectations? That's how games get ugly fast, and it nearly did. By halftime, the Fever looked like a team stretched too thin. Rotations were patched together with duct tape. Players were gassed. And then came the moment that turned frustration into fury. Midway through the second quarter, Sophie Cunningham battled under the rim when Bria Hartley lost her balance and fell straight into Cunningham's right knee. The crack of impact was enough to make the crowd groan in unison. Cunningham's scream cut through the noise as she crumpled, unable to stand. Trainers rushed out. Connecticut staff even came to help. No whistle, no foul, nothing. And that's where the belief system kicked in. Fever fans, and even Cunningham's own family, weren't seeing an accident. They were seeing a pattern. Caitlin Clark had already been knocked out earlier this year with questionable hits. J.C. Sheldon's eye poke. Marina Mabry's reckless foul. A season that felt less like basketball and more like survival. Cunningham's sister lit up the WNBA on social media. Stop fining players for complaining about refs and start protecting your athletes. Her mother? Calling Hartley out as reckless, even mean. The expectation in that moment was that anger would spiral into despair. That losing Cunningham on top of everything else would crush what little chance Indiana had. But here's where the reality flipped. Because that outrage didn't fracture the Fever. It hardened them. Inside the locker room, the message was simple. When one woman goes down, the next stands up. That wasn't just a slogan, it became oxygen. By the third quarter, Kelsey Mitchell was breathing it in like fuel. Now let's pause because this is where the story pivots from expectation to shock. Mitchell had 4 points at halftime. 4. Nothing about her first half suggested history was coming, but when she walked out after the break, it was as if someone had flipped a switch in her chest. She demanded the ball. She hunted every matchup. And then she detonated. 34 points after halftime, 10 in overtime alone. Step backs, drives, clutch free throws, back-to-back threes that carved Connecticut's lead down to nothing. If you've ever seen a player lock into a zone where the hoop looks like a canyon, that was Mitchell. And the numbers only underline how absurd it was. 11 for 22 from the field, 5 of 8 from deep, 11 for 12 at the line. 6 assists just to remind everyone she wasn't only scoring. By the end, she tied her career high with 38, the most by any player in the league this season. Caitlin Clark, watching from afar, posted just 2 words. MVP Kels. Expectations said Indiana's playoff push was dead without Clark. Reality showed Mitchell carrying her team like she'd been waiting for this exact stage, but here's where the storytelling deepens. Because Mitchell alone doesn't flip a 21-point deficit. Every masterpiece has brushstrokes that don't make the front page but give it shape. Odyssey Sims signed on a hardship contract, basically basketball's version of a lifeline. Came in and played like she'd been wearing Indiana colors for years. 19 points, 7 assists, and more importantly, a steady hand breaking Connecticut's press. She wasn't supposed to be here, but without her, Mitchell doesn't even get the ball in position to take over. Aaliyah Boston, double-double, machine. 14 points, 13 rebounds, plus 5 assists, and a couple of blocks. Her presence was the scaffolding that held everything upright. Natasha Howard chipped in 18 and 9, banging bodies in the paint, refusing to let Connecticut bully them. And then came Lexi Hull, quiet all game, until the one shot that mattered most. Less than a minute left in overtime, Indiana clinging. To life, Hull slides into the corner, feet set, hand steady, buries the 3 that slammed the door shut. Her 8 points won't make a headline, but without that shot, Mitchell's heroics might have gone to waste. Even Brianna Turner, who didn't fill a stat sheet, got singled out by her coach for locking down defensively in the second half. These were the players who built the foundation that let Mitchell torch the roof off. And together, they authored a reality nobody expected. A 99-93 overtime win. The largest comeback in Fever history. And here's the kicker. This wasn't just about one night. It was about what it said. Indiana is still in the playoff hunt. Still dangerous. Still unwilling to fold no matter how many times the universe seems to line up against them. Fans thought Cunningham's injury was the end. Instead, it lit the fuse. Players thought they'd crumble without a point guard. Instead, Sims, Mitchell, Boston, Hull, Howard, and Turner turned chaos into chemistry. So the expectation that this was just another painful chapter in a season of too many got blown apart by the reality that Indiana is writing a story. Bigger than one star, bigger than one injury, bigger than one game. It's a story about resilience being more than just a word on a locker room wall. It's about what happens when a team refuses to collapse, even when everyone expects them to. And maybe that's the part that sticks. Because as Mitchell walked off the court, as her teammates celebrated a win nobody saw coming, the Fever weren't just alive in the standings. They were alive in the imagination of everyone watching. A reminder that sports are never about what's supposed to happen, but about what does. If you felt that surge, if you're rooting for Sophie Cunningham's recovery and for this team that refuses to stay down, then be part of that story. Drop your thoughts, drop your support, and keep riding with this group. Because if this game proved anything, it's that the expectation will never be enough to define the Fever. The reality will always be bigger, louder, and a whole lot harder to count out.